This is the first segment of the Reams-Manthe 1983 anatomy class that was held in Florida. There are 20 tapes with 39 segments because there is nothing on the backside of number 20 tape. Please enjoy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In the book of Genesis, it said that God made man from the dust of the earth. Dust. Today we call that kind of dust colloids. Colloids. Because each one is a little solar system within itself. He also said this: He breathed into man the breath of life, and he became a living soul. So, if when man does not have the breath of life, then it is a dead soul. It says, the soul that sinneth, it shall perish. But the soul that is born into the kingdom shall have everlasting life. In the book of Job it says this: But flesh and blood, as we have it today, which is understood, shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. It does not say anything about the frame, the bones there. It shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. That so interested me a few years ago till I went into a very deep study on what it meant when it said that flesh and blood shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. I was amazed at how much the Bible had to say about it. Adam in the Garden of Eden had an anionic body, and they were created in the image of God, who has an anionic body. Eve then came, and she had an anionic body. Their children had anionic bodies until the fall. And then God changed their bodies from anionic to cationic, the kind of bodies we have today. In an anionic body there is no death. There is no time, there's only rhythm. We don't know how much rhythm was in the Garden of Eden before the fall. Time began with the fall, and it will end with the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ to redeem, to put the final redemption upon this planet. There is much in the Bible about this. You'll find it again in the book of Psalms, where it says that Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden was clothed in light. They were not nude until the fall, and then they realized that they were nude. And the word nude denotes art. The word nakedness denotes shame. So it denotes, nakedness denotes shame because of disobedience to God's command. If for such a little thing as eating of an apple, which David said it was an apple, I believe it then. If David said it was an apple, I believe it was an apple, would cause man to be changed from ANAT to ANAT, then look how important it is to be absolutely obedient to God. Absolute obedience is holiness. Holiness is seeking to be like Him, is seeking perfection. Over in the book of Isaiah, I believe it talks about Elijah being taken up in a fiery chariot into the heavens. A chariot of fire. ANAT is nothing any more or less than fire itself. Have you ever seen a fire burning? That is ANAT that you were looking at. The only thing about it, it's a contained fire. It is a fire on a frequency. We live on the same frequency as the Lord Himself, because we are made in His image. So, whenever you begin to study anatomy, you should also begin to realize something about the history of what man was like when he was perfect. Again, we find that when Jesus died, a soldier thrust his sword into the side of our Lord, and he shed there the last drop of blood he had for the remission of our sins. He was buried. The third day he rose in an ANAT body. He could move great distances instantaneously through solid walls. And he was the Son of God, or he would not have rose on the third day. He would not have been the conqueror of death. And on the 40th day, he ascended unto his Father. He says, I go to prepare a place for you, and where I am, there you may be also. Do you really believe that? If you believe it, hold up your hands. You notice I didn't hold up my hand. I don't believe it. I know it. Because God said it, I know it. My belief has nothing to do with it. So it's not like you have up your hands and I'm near you that you would really know it. My belief has nothing to do with it. Not a thing. Not a thing. It is dependent now if the return of our Lord and His ascension into heaven depended on my belief, I don't think He'd make it. But because He said so, I know He can do it. That's the difference in presumption and faith, is belief and to know. To know wherein you speak, to know wherein you stand, to know you know your subject. Also, there is a difference in temperature of an ANAT body and a ANAT body. The temperature of a cationic body is about 98 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature of an anionic body is 980 degrees centigrade. When sulfur burns, it burns at 720 degrees centigrade. It tells us in the Bible that the wicked shall make war upon the righteous after 1,000 years and seek to the second resurrection. Those that died without knowing the Lord or serving the Lord in this generation shall rise again and shall make war against the saints, but they shall rise in a cationic body. Well, you say, has that ever been done before? Yes. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, he raised him back in a cationic body. Whenever Jesus was crucified on the cross, there was darkness for 3 days on the earth, but the graves were open and many people that had been dead for a long time had gone up and were seen walking and visiting with their relatives again. And a cationic body, well, what happened to them? Well, they died again and was buried again. Then, it says, whenever after the second resurrection, and they shall make war against the saints, and to take the holy city, the New Jerusalem, that fire and brimstone, which brimstone is burning sulfur, shall come down out of heaven and destroy the wicked and the twinkling of an eye, and they shall be as though they have never been. And the righteous shall tread upon the ashes of the wicked. They will not burn perpetually, as you have so often heard. The Bible doesn't say that. It does say that Lucifer, the old serpent, and the Antichrist shall burn without end. Those three shall burn without end. But the others shall be consumed in the twinkling of an eye. During World War II, we have flamethrowers. Of all things in war that I fear would fear the most, if I had any fear of war, or its deadly weapons, would be the flamethrower. There's no way to get out of the way of it. But there's just one blessed thing about it. It only takes one breath, and that's all she wrote. It's as quick as driving with the flamethrower. But if you can guard your nose for a moment or two and roll around a little bit, you can prolong that death by as much as 15 minutes. But you will still die. You cannot put that fire out. It will not put out. So what I'm saying is this. That is, there is a cationic fire and an anionic fire. And the cationic fire is the tar, red hot and burning. But the anionic is the flame itself. The the flame itself. Or you see a red hot electric wire, or red hot stove. That's kind of how it heat fire that you see. But it is still the fire flame within the iron, or within the metal itself, is anionic. We were made marvelously put together. Now, the saints, with a temperature of 980 degrees centigrade, will be perfectly comfortable. Just perfectly comfortable. And you can walk through hell and not need a fan. It's perfectly comfortable. Let's look at another case in the Bible. Later, Meshach, Abednego in the fiery furnace. The fire was made 700 times hotter, or 7 times as hot. And all night they walked in the flame and did not need a fan. But the fourth being was seen walking with them, that they did not sleep. And when the king called their name the next morning, they came out of the fiery furnace. And he's afraid of the fourth being. He said that we are on the three. They did not know that it was Gabriel, or an archangel, or the Lord himself was there with him and prevented the fire from burning them. Turn their bodies to an anionic body that night. So the power of God to create is greater than man can comprehend. Let's look at one more thing about this anionic realm in which we shall someday be a part of, if we love the Lord and serve Him with all our mind, with all our being, and all our heart. This realm is without time. There is no time there. When Jesus comes, time shall be no more. And so it said in Revelation. But there is rhythm. So there is no difference in yesterday and tomorrow. And today it's all the same thing. Now, you've heard it said, how long did it take God to create this universe? If there's no time there, it had to be done instantly. Do you understand? Instantly. So it is that in this class, I want you to open your minds to receive the truth that we have to teach you here, which at times may be contrary in some respects to what you've already known or already learned. But as you go into practice and to work and to do research, you're going to find that this is extremely active. One of the things I never cease to be amazed at is how little people see in going through this world. How little they see. They miss most of the things in life. They miss it. They don't see it. Or it doesn't register in their mind. It's just not there. I've been driving a car a few years ago, and I had a group of very brilliant people in the car with me, and by the side of the highway, there was a big rattlesnake coiled up there. And I stopped the car and I said, "What you stopping for?" I said, "I want to show you a big snake that's coiled up your side of the road." I backed up about 100 feet, things that they didn't even see. So, learn to see everything you look at. This time, open your minds, but don't open it wide enough for your brains to fall out. Please remember that God made us, but He didn't make us alike. I had a man come in, and I brought his son into my office one time, and he was anemic, and his urea was sky high, and I put my stethoscope on his chest, and no way could I find the heartbeat. No way. I had him to breathe deeply, I had him to dance around, and trying to pick up the heart. No way could I find the heartbeat. Finally, I turned him around, and just accidentally, for some reason, touched the stethoscope on the right side, and there was his heart under the right lung. So, a healthy, normal boy, and the heart under the right lung. So, we're not all made exactly alike, but we all have the same kind of parts almost hardly. When the cars first came out, were automatic shifts. Some of the people didn't trust them. The automatic shift. They insisted on having a shift lever in case the other one didn't work. So, a salesman said, well, we'll put it on for you, you got to have it. But he said, did you ever notice that men have nipples like women? And he said, what do you suppose that was for? He said, when kids ever had a baby. And he said, it works, whether you have a shift in here or not. So, we're made almost alike, which is quite a bit different. But anyway, we're going to learn some of these differences this week. We're going to learn some of the things that you've been seeing all your life and still haven't seen. And you're going to probably have questions answered that you have often wondered how it happened. And I don't know of a medical book today that tells you how blood is made. And I've got some of the latest ones out. But this week, when you have finished this class, you will know how the body makes blood. You will know how then that there is no blood that flows directly through the bones to make the marrow of a bone. Where does that come from? How does it get in there? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever tried to trace the circulation of blood through a bone? How many have?
They just tell us that the blood vessels going through openings.
That's right, but have you ever tried to trace them? Well, I did. I did trace them. How did I do it? I took guinea pigs. I gave them certain injections of material that I knew that you would find in bone marrow, and took a Geiger counter and followed the radioactive material into the marrow of the bone. And you know what happened? It dehydrated it. what do? How you got it in there now. Then you want to find how it comes out. So you blow a hole in the bone. You put a very dilute amount in there, extremely dilute amount, the smallest amount really that you can pick up with a Geiger counter, and put it in and see how it gets out. And I followed it out, how it got out of the bone, where it goes out of the bone, and so forth. What did get out, it all never did get out, but some of it got out. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of the things we're teaching in the class today is the result of years and years of research into the phenomena of the majesty of God's creation. We are marvelously made. In that equation you have, there's 2,600 differentials. If all the water in all the oceans is converted to drops, you only have 1/3 enough drops to express what could happen to a human body. Numbers beyond our conception. Did you know that there's 57 things that can happen to a tomato from the time it's picked till it gets to the table? But to keep it from getting to the table, 57 things can happen to it before that tomato gets to the table to keep it from being consumed by human beings. So, that's only a drop in the bucket for what can happen to us. In this class, I think that you're going to learn quite a lot about yourself, about others. Father, we thank you for this morning devotion. We thank you for the greatness of thy creation and thy majesty, and the almighty power that you have within yourself and that you've bestowed upon us. And we would only use a fraction of it to study the beauty of thy creation, to behold thy majesty in all living cells, and to seek to make this earth as perfect as it is humanly possible to make it. We know when we have failed that you will finish this great job of creation. And until tomorrow morning, when we continue this great study about that creation, we ask thee to open our minds and unite this class in one accord, that we might be found worthy to be called thy servant. In the name of Jesus, I ask it. Amen. I have discussed this class with Dr. Manty, and I've asked him to more or less give you the basic fundamentals of anatomy. And he will give you what's in the books. And along with it, I will supply you what the book has not supplied. So it's all yours now.
Which books do I want to use?
Thank you, Dr. Ream. I want to say right away from the start that Dr. Reams is the instructor for this course, and I am his helper and moderator, and I am here to learn some of these things as best as I can also this week. In the 2.5 years that I've been open at the retreat, I have learned a lot, which did not come out of some of the courses that I had from Dr. Reams in the RBTI part of it, but I've kind of hired him as my private tutor to help me and to answer some questions that I have that have come up with working with patients. So some of what I will be telling you this week I have learned on a personal basis from him and phone conversations, and I have recorded those sessions that I've had with him. And so, but I want to just clarify that that if there's a conflict over what I say and what he says, I am going to back down and learn what he has to say. Because as he said to you earlier this morning, that in practice, some of these things that he has taught me, which was contrary to what I had in my orthodox anatomy and my orthodox physiology, I have seen things that he has told me to look for, and it has caused me to open my eyes and to become more observant. Now, I want to make one other comment, if I can, about this anatomy coloring book. We will make reference to it at times as we go through the lecture part of it. And if you don't mind, Dr. Reams, the orthodox way of looking at anatomy, I do not feel that, I believe it's necessary for those of you that have had it, but that's what Dr. Murphy is going to be covering in the evening session. And we will be covering anatomy and physiology here as well. But if you have time during the break or before tonight's session, there is a section in the book called Extremely Important Tips. And that section you should try to read over before the first session tonight. But that's an extremely important part of this anatomy coloring book. And so it's extremely important tips, it says, on how to get the most out of this book. And I find it's valuable, and I think that will be of some benefit to you. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that I have up here on the table some textbooks on anatomy and some other reference manuals that I have gotten, and I'll have them out here for you to look at during break if you wish. There is one book, however, that I've just recently gotten that I haven't even had time to show Dr. Reams, but I told him about it. But if you have a weak stomach, please do not look at this book. And I'll tell you why. It has full-color pictures of cadavers in it. And how many don't know what a cadaver is? Raise your hand. Okay. When in the health sciences, as the students are learning gross anatomy, actually what they work on are corpses. And so the scientific term for a corpse is a cadaver. But this has full-color pictures of cadavers in it, and for some of you it may cause you to lose your breakfast. So please, if you have a weak stomach, don't look at this book. Just leave that one alone. But I have a couple of other atlases of anatomy that are just paintings or drawings or sketches that you can look at, and that would be just another way of looking at what we may be talking about here.
I have said to many out here that want to see the pictures, they may be blessed to never see them.
And I think he's talking about other pictures than what are in this book, necessarily. But the other thing I want to say before we get started is this course is too short. Because when I sat down, I took some time off from the retreat, went to a motel, and I spent a couple of days there mapping out what I felt should be covered in this course. It's just too short. And it's a week long at best, but we're only going to be able to touch on things and highlight some points. But therefore, there will be ample time for questions and answers. And if you have some areas that you've had difficulty with in the field and has blocked you in your learning and education and understanding, when we open the class up for questions and answers, don't hesitate to ask your questions, so that at least by the end of the week, if you've gotten most or all of your questions answered, you will have gotten something out of the course. But we will begin to cover this material. And but I just want you to know that there are some things we're just not going to be touching on. Also, in my session B, C, and D, we do talk about anatomy and physiology in some areas. Now, some of that material we may bring up in this class, but again, just to touch on it. The material that I have laid out that I would like to see us cover this week is not taught in B, C, and D. So some of you have also had, this is the first class I've ever taught in which I've got people here at different levels in your education. And some of you that have D know what has been covered in B, C, and D, and you know what hasn't been covered. And so I'm desiring to cover some of that material that we have not ever covered heretofore. And others of you, if I say, well, that's in B, or that's in C, or that's in D, you'll just understand that when you get to that part, we'll cover it maybe in greater detail. So, the first thing we're going to do then today is we're going to begin with a general overview of the anatomy. Yes, Helen?
Will tapes be available to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, right. We'll talk about that later this week. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about the general overview of anatomy. And if you'll take your anatomy coloring book and turn to plate 1. Yes, Jack?
Before we begin, may I ask Dr. Gibbons a question?
Yes, if it's pertinent to this material right now. This morning. Okay, if I can make another question too, as I've made a comment here, for sake of the recorders, if you could just, when you ask a question, boom it out. Just speak clearly and loudly, and then we'll be able to hear it. Go ahead, Jack. You want to ask about what you mentioned this
Good
morning.
morning, and thank you for your help. I was extremely interested when you talked about how blood gets into the bone and how blood gets out of the bone. The part that particularly interested me was that you elaborated somewhat by telling us in outline some experiments which you had done to confirm this theory. When I have listened to you before, you have also at times mentioned experiments that you did. I have wondered why you have never written up books on the experiments that you have done, which have upheld the theories that you have made. Because to me, this would be very important indeed. It would show me how you came to these theories in the Reams ionization method. It would also enable myself and other people to repeat these experiments and learn a lot from them, and also we would be enabled perhaps to try to get further in the experiment and enlarge upon them and have a communication with you in this field. Have you ever thought of getting all your experiments down in book form?
I will answer your question. In 1939, I wrote an article backed up by some experiments on leukemia. And I'm not going into the detail of it. I published it. It was published. And I caught so much hell over that. And still, occasionally, I get a kickback from it, until I said I would never again publish an article. However, I did record accurately in books with pictures, drawings, and everything accordingly put together scientifically. But when the police raided our place and took all my notes and all the proof and everything else, they destroyed them completely. I no longer have them. They never returned them to me.
One point I would like to make, if I may, about your being given hell by the authorities, and that is the help I've received in this sphere from people who've been to another country where anyone with free ideas is given even a greater hell. They are sent to Siberia. But the people with liberal ideas are finding ways of getting around this, and they only publish now these ideas in the private newspapers called Samizdat. These are only circulated among known and trusted members. They are never publicly published. And in this way, a great deal of information and research is getting around in Russia itself and getting out of Russia, which is very valuable to the rest of the world. Would you think of publishing privately for we members some of your experiments that you have done to uphold what you have done, particularly in the energy field?
Quite a lot that will be taken up in this class. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
On plate number 1, then, if you'll open that up in your book, I put it up here on the overhead projector. There's some terminology that we need to just discuss briefly to help you understand, as we are discussing the body and the different parts of the body, so we can communicate. You know, it's frustrating for me in one respect, and I'm sure it is for some of you also, about, it'll be 5 years ago, or actually about 4.5 years ago, when I was in private session with Dr. Reams, I realized that I was going to have to dump my formal education to be able to understand what he was trying to tell me. And with that went most of my terminology. My big 50-cent words that we had learned in school kind of got dumped right with that too. And so, because most of the students attending my classes and coming to the retreat are lay persons, I've had to redo my entire terminology so that they can understand. And some of you then that have had training in scientific terms, don't hesitate to correct me if I'm in error. I'd appreciate all the help that I can get. So I'm this class going to have to go back and pick up some of those terms, and some of them I may not remember exactly. But let's start here with looking at the 3 body planes. They've taken a person and they've cut them into 3 planes, and we need to discuss those 3 planes. So the first plane that's mentioned here is the median plane, and that divides the body into the right half and the left half. In other words, if you would take a saw and go right down between the eyes and between the lungs, it would cleave the left lung from the right lung, and the left kidney from the right kidney, the left leg from the right leg. So in other words, it would split you in half, but it's a vertical slice that's dividing one side of the body from the other. And the median, though, is so that it's exactly in half. Now, if it's going to slice through at another part of the body that is not cutting it equally in half, it's called sagittal, and that's the second word there. So the median divides it right down through the midline, but the sagittal section is dividing it not equally in half vertically. Now, the coronal or the frontal plane is the same term, and that slices the front half of the body from the back half, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, that letter B. No, B was sagittal, C is coronal, thank you. And coronal or frontal is if you had a saw that was able to come through the ears, and in other words, so you've got a front half to the body and a back half. And I'll define what we mean by that. If I could use some other terms, it's actually dividing anterior from posterior in an anatomical terminology. Anterior meaning to the front, posterior meaning to the back. And this coronal or frontal plane is doing that. And then the third plane is the transverse or the cross horizontal, which is slicing your body top from bottom. Top half of the body from the bottom half, or in our terminology, it would be separating more the anionic from the cationic, but in this kind of terminology, it would be separating cranial from caudal, or superior from inferior. So I'll just go back over those. Median is separating the right half from the left half. Sagittal is an unequal slice of the body. The coronal is separating A from P, anterior from posterior, front half from the back half, and then the transverse or the cross horizontal separates caudal from cranial, or superior from inferior, or anionic from cationic, if we could also substitute those terms in there. So that's the three planes that we're going to be discussing. And sometimes when Dr. Ames or myself will make reference to an organ, or where it actually is lying, or looking at it, we'll try to give you our point of view, because how we describe it to you is relative to your point of view.